Good afternoon. My name's Simon Trilsbach. I am the CEO and co-founder of a small software company based in Melbourne called 2 Steps. And it's my pleasure to talk to you today. The agenda, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about synthetics, because this is quite simple. And in fact, I was talking to somebody earlier and I said it's actually a bit of an accident that we're here today, because when we built 2 Steps, we certainly didn't build it as a Citrix product. We built it as a synthetics product, and it just so happened that our customers started using it on Citrix, and we were like, oh, okay, that's awesome. And so Citrix and 2 Steps is now one of our largest use cases. But I thought I'd just kind of take a step back and talk to you about what synthetics actually is, and apologies for those that know all about this stuff. We'll talk about some customer stories, we'll have a look at 2 Steps in action, so I'll bring my colleague Dave, who's the head of pre-sales engineering, to look at the architecture and have a look at the product working. I've got a use case with Queensland Health, and then some Q&A. So it's getting really noisy. I mean, basically, when we think about monitoring, there are so many acronyms now. There's real user monitoring, or RUM, there's synthetic monitoring, there's active monitoring, there's passive monitoring, there's digital experience monitoring, there's end user experience monitoring, and it just goes on and on and on. In fact, the new one now is, my favorite acronym is OLLY, O11Y, which is the new acronym for observability. And a little fact for you, somebody told me this the other day, the 11 represents the 11 letters in between O and Y in observability. So when I found that out, I thought the person that came up with that had way too much time on their hands. So anyway, it's complicated, it's confusing, there's a lot of noise, but we're going to talk about synthetic monitoring for Citrix apps and nothing else, so we're going to keep it really, really simple. So what are the business issues around poor performance? So you may, depending on what your role is, you may hear, or even as a customer perspective, sorry, my system seems to be taking ages today, I can't log in, running a report at the end of the month seems to take forever. And all of this basically means cost of the business. So if it's a customer-facing website, it might be, do you know what, I just gave up and I went to a competitor because I couldn't book the flight. Or, kind of 6 hours is the average time to fix a critical IT incident. So there's real kind of hard costs to poor customer experience. Or poor employee productivity. And this is some of the costs to the organization. So unexpected downtime results in lost revenue of 53%, and that ranges up to $140,000 for large companies and IT incidents. So it's kind of real cost to the business. So synthetic monitoring has been around for ages. 1989, Mercury, that was when that was founded. Then Selenium was invented, and an interesting tidbit here is the founders of Selenium hated Mercury so much, that's why they called it Selenium, because Selenium is the antidote to mercury poisoning. HB bought Mercury for $4.5 billion. Selenium and WebDriver merged to create Selenium 2.0. And synthetic monitoring really was around automating web applications. So if you look at most of the big vendors out there, whether it's AppDynamics or New Relic or Datadog or Dynatrace, if you really unpack what they're doing with synthetics, it's based on Selenium, meaning if you want to put synthetics on a website, that's fine, but if you want to do something on Windows or Java or Citrix, then it's not going to work. And so that's why we built 2 Steps, because we don't use Selenium, we use something called visual recognition, and that's what powers the automation. And the end result is we don't really care what the underlying technology is. As long as there's a user interface and we can see things, then our robot can automate the workflow. And that's what basically creates the end user experience monitoring. We'll see that in action a little bit further into the presentation. And then in 2020, we were Citrix Ready certified. We showed it to 2 people, and one of them is in the room, Anil. And hey, Anil, there you go. It was Anil and his colleague Rubal, and we were trying to get some free Citrix stuff, actually. That's why we contacted Citrix. And they said, hey, let's have a look at the product, and we showed them the product. They said, wow, this is awesome, let's talk about getting you certified. And so that was a nice accident as well. So this is what Selenium code looks like. This is something that Dave created. It's a software package called I Hate My Life. And this is what you have to do if you're doing the scripting. We don't do that. We've basically created a no code, no scripting, no agents way of building automation. So we're looking at elements on the screen and we're telling the two-steps robot what to do. Look for this icon and do this. Double click, right click, enter text, mouse over the image, wait for the image, various options. And the secret sauce, I guess the thing that we do, which has become really powerful and why we've been successful, is we go past the Citrix login page. So not only are we able to time how long it takes to log into Citrix, we then take it steps further and we start to interact with the virtualized application. So it doesn't matter whether it's kind of Salesforce or Teams or whatever you're thinking, whatever application you're using in your enterprise, then Two Steps is able to start to automate workflows on that and then produce performance data. So these are the things that we can do that other vendors can't solve. So this is my kind of brag slide, so apologies. But as I mentioned, one of the kind of north stars of when we were building the company was we wanted to create a solution that anybody can use. And I'm kind of living proof. I'm a technical Neanderthal and I do my own demos with this product. And that's because it is really that simple. So it's no code, you don't need to be a technical expert. And the benefit to businesses is you can then push that out to people that understand the applications. So rather than the monitoring team being overloaded with requirements, you can say, hey, Mr. Application Owner, you are interested in end user experience on your application, get one of your team to build it. It's that easy. As I mentioned before, we can work with Citrix applications, that's why we're here. And we can also generate two-factor authentication codes during the login process as well. So whether that's an authentication app like Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator, we're able to generate, the robot is able to generate that unique one-time PIN every time it runs the automation. And we can also work with SMS as well. So one-time PINs via SMS, we can suck those one-time PINs up and put them back into the workflow. So just talking a little bit about use case, this is Queensland Health, and they came to us and said, look, we've got this problem. We have a patient administration system called Cerner. It's accessed by everybody across 17 different hospitals, and when it runs slow, we get a call and it says, Cerner's running slow. What's the problem? And the first problem is we don't know how big the problem is. Is it that one user? Is it that one hospital? Is it a cluster of hospitals? Is it every hospital? We just don't know. We have no observability. So what we were able to do was put in, if you think of it like a hub and spoke model, we were able to deploy a main two-step server which sits on a Linux virtual machine at head office, and then deploy monitoring nodes in every single location, so every single hospital. And the robot logged into Citrix, logged into Cerner, and then looked for a dummy patient record and timed every single step. And all of that performance data then got pushed into a central dashboard, and then they could very, very quickly understand what was going on with performance from a geographical perspective. The other thing that we were able to do was produce video replays of the performance. And the interesting thing here, and I'm sure this is going to resonate with other people in the room, is the first piece of technology that was getting blamed was Citrix. And guess what? Citrix wasn't the problem. It was the application. So the video replay was able to prove that. And Queensland Health were then able to go back to Cerner and say, hey, Mr. Vendor, here's a video replay of your system not performing, can you please fix it? And it took all of the arguments and the debate out of the question. They looked at it and went, yeah, that problem, we'll try and help. So I guess just to kind of recap on the requirements, poor visibility, we implemented observability for them. The robot needed to log in via two-factor authentication. We were able to do that. One centralized dashboard and the video replays. So this is a time when it starts to get really technical, and I dive off the podium very, very quickly and introduce my pre-sales engineer, Dave.
Thank you very much, Simon. It's not going to get too technical, I'll show you. But I just wanted have a quick chat about how a network diagram looks when you're installing two-steps, what you actually need to put in place. So in this diagram, you can see the blue icons represent everything that is the customer's existing infrastructure. So you've got at the top of the screen, you've got a user sitting at his desk, talking to a Citrix front end. To teach a robot what to do, you can see those icons are the black icons. So you've got a Citrix main server running a web server, and that web server also runs a robot. So you can teach that robot, as someone was showing you a quick demonstration of, you can teach that robot how to walk through a Citrix workflow. So that could be logging into Citrix, starting up an application, downloading a document, conducting a search, and then logging back out again. To talk to the Queensland Health server application, you'd go to the green icons and just replicate, install remote servers like you can control via a control channel, a single TCP connection, and you can install those remote servers wherever you want to. So that can be a small form factor server, it can be a virtual machine, wherever you can install it could be a physical machine for that matter, wherever you can install a Linux server. And that's pretty much it from a two-steps infrastructure point of view. That's all you need. So extremely easy to install with very low requirements. Right, so we're just going to walk through now actually building a test. So this is a demonstration of just pressing play. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so you can see there we're just selecting the type of technology. So we're going to start on a Chrome browser, and you can see just every time you click on the screen, that command builder window comes up, which lets you click, send text to the screen, wait for an image, whatever you want to do. Okay, so this part of the screen here, the main part, is what the robot is seeing. And over on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the instructions that are being sent to or recorded by the robot for replaying later. So at this point in time, we're just logging into the Citrix storefront, and you can see that there's two boxes there. One, what the robot is using for visual recognition, and secondly, the little crosshairs, which is where the mouse click will go relative to the recognition. So it doesn't matter if those images move around the screen, menu changes, something like that. We can still track it and click on it. Okay, clicking relative to what you've got. So now we're entering a password, so you can do that in an obscured fashion, of course, and pressing the login button. And now we're actually starting up the Citrix client. So now you can see it's gone into a Windows mode, but because we're using visual recognition, two-steps doesn't care. All right, it's just looking at images that are appearing on the screen, so it doesn't care that a Windows desktop has suddenly appeared. So we're just going to open up a quick dummy application, which is the Server Manager, just to show you just the capabilities. Look, hey, we've gone from a browser to a Windows application, and the interactions remain exactly the same, right? So you don't require a programming skill set to be able to automate an entire workflow over different platforms. It's just a matter of somebody with enough skills to be able to understand the platform that you're working with. Okay, so the classic case for us is a problem localization. You can run a native application in its own environment and run the same application through Citrix. Somebody with a normal analyst can do this, no problems at all. All right. So once you've we're just going to close the application down now. And once we've closed the application down, we've now recorded the workflow, which you can see over on the right-hand side of the screen. And then it's a matter of creating some checkpoints. So checkpoints are just logical collections of instructions that you can assign timing to. So how long before you want a warning email or an alert saying the application is running too slow, and how long before you want to mark the test as failed. So going through marking a couple of checkpoints, and once you've done that, then the only thing left to do is to get the tester name and press save. And once you've saved the test, you can schedule it. It should be coming about now. And the schedule is quite powerful. So you can see here, every time you press the new schedule button, you get an option of being able to create a new schedule, a new cron type schedule. So here we're running every 5 minutes during the week and every 10 minutes on the weekend. So You can choose different sites to run it. So that's where you'd be saying, look, run this from Perth, run this from Melbourne, run this from Hobart. Okay, and pressing save, and that's it. You're done. And in that little sequence, you've automated an entire workflow, going from a Citrix web browser into Windows, running a Windows application, shutting it down, saving the test, and scheduling it. All right? Okay. That's me, Simon. Thank you very much for your time. I hope that was informative.
Okay, so the summary, the 3 takeaways from me. It's super fast to implement this solution. It sits on a Linux virtual machine, it's very lightweight, and you can get immediate monitoring up and running. Somebody asked me earlier, is it real time? The answer is no, it's not real time, but it's really close to. So if you're running at a high cadence every couple of minutes, then you're going to get alerts if performance is degrading. If the end user experience is degrading, then you're going to know really quickly. Flexibility, performance after the Citrix login, we can deploy on-premise or cloud, in a data center, it really doesn't matter to us. And speed, no code, and as you can see, you can build tests in seconds. I think that the one kind of key element for me, for the Citrix professionals in the house is we are able to provide video evidence that Citrix is not the problem. So when you're in that war room and everybody's pointing fingers at each other, it could be quite valuable to come along with video and say, aha, it's not my area. I think that's it from us. If there's any questions, happy to field them or pass them on to Dave. There's one already. Is it technical? Okay. I'll do my best.
With the endpoint testing, let's say you're testing for Perth and Brisbane, that sort of thing, is that also a Linux VM?
Yeah, it's a lighter version, so it's not got all of the components of the main server, but yeah, it could be, we've seen people install it on something like an Intel NUC, just put it in a kind of rack somewhere, but yeah, a Linux VM, yeah.
How about the licensing?
Good question. I love that question. It's a consumption model. So it's an annual subscription based on consumption, and consumption in our scenario is the number of test executions. So we look at 3 different variables. How many applications do you want to run the robot on? How often do you want to run the robot, and from how many locations? And we put that into a calculator, and it says you need N million tests a year, and that's how. And once you've subscribed to those tests, then it's completely flexible. It's not locked down. You might say, okay, that application is actually quite stable. I want to move those tests over to another area. So you can move the dials however you want.
Can I do load testing in your queue?
Load testing. It's not really designed for load testing, but Dave, you might have a better answer than me.
Yes, it's not designed for load testing, but you can also access the tests via a REST API. So if you wanted to kick off lots of tests, you could.
Can we train the robot just to resolve issues?
If you're brave enough to teach the robot to resolve issues, it will resolve issues for you. Those specific ones.
Like examples?
So for example, how you do that is you'd hook up the workflow via the REST API to a webhook. So for example, Splunk can when an alert happens, one of the actions is you can fire things off via webhooks. So yeah, absolutely, you could train it to say log onto a machine and reboot it, something like that.
Yeah, I think that they would be pretty simple use cases. And when Dave just mentioning Splunk, probably one thing to call out is that there's 2 versions of the product. The initial product that we built was built on top of Splunk, so everything is fully integrated. So if you're leveraging Splunk as your data lake, then that's good. But we also have a standalone version as well, which has no Splunk dependencies. So if you want to push the data to Elastic or Sumo Logic, or just have its own proprietary database and dashboarding, then we've got the standalone product as well.
Is it available for reselling?
It absolutely is. That's our primary go-to-market. So let's talk, sir.
For
managed services providers, can it be multi-tier across multiple customers?
Absolutely.
One pane of glass?
I don't see why not. We probably need to dive into that a bit more, but I think high level, possibly, yeah. I think that's it. Well, thank you so much for the questions. Thanks for your time.